Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are going to be extracting the insights from a poetry collection by Poet McGill,
Oh, cool.
Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light. And I think this is going to be a really fascinating one. It's a journey. It's about life's ups and downs, the turbulences, but it's really told with honesty.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about faith, relationships, identity, and kind of that undercurrent woven through the whole thing is finding light,
Right.
through acceptance, forgiveness, understanding, all of those things.
Sounds very timely.
It is very timely, very timely. And one of the cool things about this poetry collection is that it was actually born out of gatherings at a place called The Barn.
The barn.
Yes, The Barn. So we're going to kind of unpack that too, because I think that's a really fascinating aspect of, how this all came about. And we have, some extra context about the author herself, which I think really adds another layer, another dimension to this deep dive.
Oh, excellent.
So are you ready to get started?
I am.
Okay. All right. Let's dive in. So, reading through all of this, what was it that really kind of stood out to you as we kind of go into this?
Well, the barn was the thing that kind of grabbed my attention first, I guess, because it's more than just a place, right?
Right.
It seemed to be a catalyst for this collection of poetry. And from what I understand, it's a place where diverse voices came together.
Right.
And I guess that just fascinates me, how a place can be a space for creativity like that. So I'd love to hear more about the barn.
Yeah, and it seems like it was, it was a real mix of people, right? It wasn't just
Yeah.
like, it wasn't homogenous. It was very diverse
Yeah.
in terms of the folks that gathered there.
Yeah.
So you had, horse riders and non-horse folks
Yeah.
coming together. And the common ground that they seemed to find was through music, conversation, and eventually that kind of blossomed into this poetry sharing.
Right.
It's really, really kind of fascinating. And I
Yeah.
think it speaks to that need for, for connection, right?
Absolutely.
That we all have and kind of carving out those spaces where those connections can actually happen.
Yeah, it is really cool. And speaking of connection, the poems themselves touch on some really universal themes.
Yes.
We see her, McGill, dealing with trust and betrayal in trust, obviously,
Right.
and finding strength in occupy, and celebrating black male beauty, which I thought was a really interesting take
Yeah.
in Skin the Black Man.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I think what makes these poems so relatable is that she's talking about stuff that we all go through.
Yep.
I mean, who hasn't dealt with betrayal or felt like they needed to find strength when they were up against a wall,
Right, absolutely.
those kinds of things. And the way she does it, it's very direct. It's very honest, emotionally honest.
Yeah, and I liked the way she uses kind of imagery and occupy. Like, she describes life as a hard road with curves and bumps, and she doesn't sugarcoat things.
No, she doesn't. And yet there's this undercurrent of hope that really comes through. This idea of finding light, even in the midst of those really, really hard things. One of the things that really kind of blew my mind was as I was researching Poet McGill, is that this isn't just someone who's kind of up in an ivory tower writing poetry. This is someone who she's a licensed funeral director and embalmer.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So to talk about a unique perspective, right?
Yeah, I would imagine that would definitely give you a different view on life and loss.
Right. And it makes you think about, how those encounters with mortality on such a a close level
Yeah.
might actually inform the way that she seeks out that light
Right.
and meaning in her poems. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, she was also an English teacher,
Uh-huh.
and she served on the Marion City Council.
Wow.
So this is someone who's very engaged in her community, very engaged in in the world around her, and I think that you really see that depth of experience really shining through in her writing. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. It really is. That's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just unpacking poems, we're unpacking the person behind them.
Right.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It is, and it doesn't stop there. She's also written 2 other books,
Oh, right.
Saved and Sexual and What God Has Joined Together. So it's like she's really interested in exploring those big questions, right?
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
faith, relationships, and how we grow
Yeah.
as people.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how someone uh who is so accomplished how their life experiences kind of filter into their art.
Absolutely.
That's
See,
really cool.
yeah. And for anyone who's listening who's thinking, hey, I want to experience this for myself,
Yeah.
Poyet McGill is actually having a poetry reading and signing on February 22nd, 2025
Oh, okay.
at the PASA Performing Arts and Science Academy in Marion, South Carolina.
Oh,
So mark your calendars.
yeah.
We'll include all that information
Yeah,
in the show notes, but yeah, definitely check it out.
for sure.
Now, going back to Ruminations,
Yeah.
one of the poems that I found really, really powerful is Wicked.
Wicked. Okay.
Yeah, and it really kind of tackles these societal expectations,
Mm-hmm.
especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
And it really encourages them to kind of embrace ambition
Mm-hmm.
and kind of defy those norms that say, this is how you should be, this is how
Yeah.
you should act.
That's great. I love that she is using that word wicked. It's often seen as a negative trait,
Yeah,
but she's turning it into a source of empowerment.
Yeah.
It's like she's saying, hey, be bold, be daring, be wicked.
right. And she doesn't just kind of speak to it, in general. She gets very specific,
Yeah.
about how society tries to, put women in a box
Yeah.
and say, this is, you can't be too ambitious.
Right.
You can't be too outspoken, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And she's like, nah, embrace that wicked side.
Right.
Embrace your drive, embrace your determination. And I just think that's such a powerful message.
It is, and it's not even just about women's empowerment. It's about anybody
Right.
who is going up against those kinds of societal norms that tell us to be small, to be quiet, to not, do the things that we're meant to do.
Right.
So I think that's a really cool message, and it makes me think about how, even though these are very personal poems,
Right.
they resonate with those universal themes.
Right. Exactly.
Like she's saying, you're not alone in this.
Right.
We've all gone through these things.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the poem that she actually wrote about the barn, the Fellowship, the Flow.
Yes.
And it really captures that joy, that energy of those gatherings
Yeah.
where, you had such a diverse group of people,
Right.
but they came together,
Yeah.
and the differences kind of melted away in this shared, laughter and music and art.
Right.
It's really a cool thing.
It is. It is. And I think that, the guy who owned the barn, Michael White, he's described as being this really welcoming figure, and I think he was really kind of the linchpin of bringing those folks together, creating that space where those connections could really happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you realize that, sometimes the most amazing things happen in the most unexpected of places.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, who would have thought that a barn
Right.
would be the,
Yep.
the birthplace of such amazing poetry?
Exactly.
And speaking of unexpected things, the way that the book is structured is kind of surprising.
Oh, okay.
You've got these 34 poems,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not arranged chronologically.
Oh, okay.
Arranged thematically.
I see.
And so, you'll have a poem about love, and then a poem about loss,
Mm-hmm.
and then a poem about faith,
Right.
and then a poem about identity.
Right.
And it's kind of like, as you're going through the collection, it's like you're peeling back the layers
Yeah.
of her experience. But what ties it all together is this idea of finding light, of searching for meaning in those moments,
Yeah.
even when it's hard,
Yeah.
even when it's really, really challenging.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed as I was reading through the poems is that she doesn't shy away from the darkness,
Right.
the hard parts of life.
Yeah.
And the poem Heartbreak really, really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember that one, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's pretty raw.
Yeah.
It's pretty unfiltered in terms of just capturing that emotion.
It really is. And I think, a lot of times we're told, hey, you got to put on a brave face,
Yeah.
don't show your true feelings.
Right.
But she's giving us permission to feel those things.
Right. Right.
It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful message, especially in today's world where, there's so much pressure
Right.
to be perfect,
Right.
to have it all together.
Right.
And she's like, nah, it's okay to fall apart sometimes.
Yeah.
It's okay to grieve. It's okay to be heartbroken.
And the thing that really got me in heartbreak was that image of walking away from your own heart.
Mm-hmm.
That just it captures that feeling
Yeah.
of numbness,
Yeah.
of almost denial
Right.
that I think we go through when we're dealing with that.
It's like a defense mechanism almost, to
Yeah.
protect ourselves
Yeah.
from that pain.
Right. But even in that poem, there's this sense of resilience.
Yeah.
It's like she's saying, yeah, this hurts,
Yeah.
but I'm going to survive this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to find my way back to myself.
Right.
And I think that's a really powerful message for anyone who's ever, had their heart broken.
It is. And it makes you realize that, even though we might go through these really dark periods in our lives,
Right.
there's always hope for healing. There's always hope for finding love again.
Right.
For finding joy again.
And I think that's what makes Coyette McGill such a compelling writer, is that she's not afraid to go to those dark places,
Yeah.
but she also never loses sight of the light.
Mm.
And that balance, I think, is something that we're going to continue to explore as we continue this deep dive
Yeah.
into Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light.
Absolutely. There's so much more to unpack here.
There is.
So I'm excited to see what else we discover.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light. We've been talking about these really personal poems and the universal themes and the whole story behind this collection. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and we've only just, scratched the surface, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible how Poet McGill, weaves those personal reflections with, some really insightful commentary on social issues, and Skin the Black Man. I mean, that one really,
It's powerful, isn't it?
yeah, it's powerful, and it's not just a celebration of, black male beauty. It's really,
It confronts the realities of racism, head on.
yeah, it does.
But it does it in a way that feels both sensitive and strong at the same time.
Yeah, and I was struck by how she kind of balances that, right? Acknowledging the pain, the injustice, but then also this unwavering focus on, resilience and strength.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, these challenges exist, but we will overcome.
Right, exactly. And that theme of resilience, it's not just limited to, overcoming racial barriers. It speaks to, any challenge that we face in life, right?
Mm. Right, absolutely. It's that inner strength, that we all have to tap into.
Right. One of the things I noticed as I was reading through the poems is how faith plays such a significant role.
Mm.
It seems to be like this driving force for her, this, source of comfort, guidance. What did you kind of pick up on that front?
I noticed that her faith is an active dialogue. It's not just a passive belief. And in Risen, for example, she reflects on Easter Sunday, and the power of faith to offer hope and renewal. That there's a line that really stood out to me. She says, "The sacrifice of God's Son is the price of my redemption."
Yeah, it's powerful, right? It really kind of speaks to, that deep connection that she has, to her faith.
Yeah, and it's not just reverence. There's questioning there too.
Right.
But I think that's what makes it relatable. It's not this perfect, never wavering faith. She expresses doubt, frustration. The things that real people grapple with.
Yeah, it's real, right? It's not sugar coated, and I think that's something that I really appreciate about this whole collection.
Yeah.
Is just that honesty. Whether she's talking about heartbreak or betrayal or societal barriers, she doesn't shy away from those difficult emotions.
She's giving us permission to feel them,
Yes.
to acknowledge the darkness.
Yeah, and it's so important, right? Because we live in a world that often tells us to kind of, put on that brave face and to hide how we're truly feeling.
Right, exactly.
I really connected with the poem Coming Back to Self.
Uh-huh.
It really resonated with me because it talks about the importance of self-reflection and finding that inner peace. There's this line, "To think clear and pure as the heart gives me peace."
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it speaks to, that power of just quieting all that noise, all the external stuff that's constantly, bombarding us, and just connecting with our own inner wisdom. What were your thoughts on that one?
I think it's so relevant, especially today.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the distractions, the information overload.
Right.
And we lose touch with ourselves. So
Yeah.
she's reminding us that true peace, true strength comes from within.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And she doesn't, pretend that that's easy. Right. I mean, that process of coming back to self, it requires discipline, honesty, a willingness to confront our own weaknesses. And there's a line in the poem that I think really captures that. She says, coming back to myself takes more than a promise. It challenges me to change.
Yeah.
So it's not passive. It's this ongoing journey.
Right.
Let me
You get to
find-
keep working at it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I find so inspiring about McGill's work is that she doesn't present herself as having it all figured out.
Right.
She's on the journey with us,
Right.
sharing her insights, her vulnerabilities, and it's so honest and graceful.
It is. It's funny. As I was reading through the poems, I was really kind of captivated by how she uses language. Her imagery, the metaphors, the symbolism. It adds such richness.
Yeah, I know what you mean. In the poem, The Barn, The Fellowship, The Flow, she describes the people gathering at the barn as a tide that moves a ship and a force that erodes a mountain and smooths rough land.
Yeah, it's powerful, right?
It is.
It really captures that, that transformative power of community, how it can reshape us.
Right.
Help us to kind of overcome obstacles.
And there's like a subtle spiritual element to it as well. How she weaves her faith into her observations about human connection.
Right. And those threads of faith and community, they're intertwined throughout the whole collection.
Yeah, they are.
And it creates this tapestry of resilience, of hope, of,
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And speaking of imagery, I really was drawn to her use of nature.
Oh, yeah.
She draws these parallels between the natural world and human emotions.
Yeah, in Big Trees, she talks about trees being silent witnesses of the hand of God, and it evokes this sense of awe and wonder at the beauty and resilience of the natural world.
Yeah. And it's like she's finding solace and inspiration in those natural cycles, of growth, of renewal.
Yeah, she is.
And it ties back into that whole theme of finding light, right? It's like even in the midst of darkness, even when things are hard, there's always something beautiful. There's always a source of hope.
Right, if we just open ourselves to seeing it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the poems that I found to be really kind of unexpected
Oh, okay.
was Moaning. And it's so short.
Yeah.
It's so emotionally packed.
It is. And I love how she uses that word moaning to represent, this whole spectrum of emotions from pain and loss to love and desire.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple word.
Yeah.
But it's so full of meaning in her hand.
And she describes it as a language that few can translate, right?
Right.
Which makes me think about the mystery of human connection. That sometimes we have to go beyond words to really understand each other.
You have to tune in to the nonverbal cues, the energy.
Right.
It's not being said.
And what's remarkable is that she achieves all of this with such simplicity and clarity in her language.
Yeah, she does. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It is. I agree.
And I think that's what makes Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light such a powerful and enduring collection. It's a testament to the human spirit, right?
Yeah.
Our ability to be resilient, to find hope, to connect with each other.
Absolutely.
And it's a reminder that even when we're facing those challenges, those inevitable challenges of life, we can choose to find the light.
We can choose to find the light.
And we're back. We've been spending some time with Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light. And, it's funny, her words really have kind of stayed with me. There's a lot there to unpack, to really think about.
Yeah, no, it's been a really rich journey going through these poems with you.
It has. It has.
And one of the things that I keep coming back to is that sense of community that was so central to the creation of this work. It wasn't just the place where the poems were born. It was a source of inspiration,
Mm.
of strength.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing that I keep kind of circling back to as well. How the barn functioned as, I almost want to say like a character
Yeah.
in this whole thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a backdrop. It was something more. And it makes you wonder, how those gatherings not just shaped the poems, but really shaped her, her perspective on life in general.
It really does. It makes you think about how important it is to have those spaces,
Yeah.
where we can connect with others, share our vulnerabilities, be creative, and not be judged.
Right. And it makes you think, where are those spaces for us
Right.
in our lives today? How do we create them?
How do we find them?
How do we find them? How do we foster that same sense of belonging, of shared purpose?
Hmm.
It's like her stories, a call to action in a way,
It is. It is.
to really seek out or create
Yeah.
those kinds of spaces where that authentic connection can happen. Something that's been on my mind, and maybe you have some thoughts about this is, her background.
Yeah.
The fact that she's a funeral director, that she's an embalmer.
Right.
It's such a unique perspective to bring to poetry. And I keep wondering, how do you think that might have influenced her work?
It's hard to say for sure, but I would imagine that working so closely with death and grief would give you a different view of life.
Right.
Perhaps a heightened awareness of its fragility,
Right, right.
of how precious each moment is.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe by confronting, mortality in such a direct way
Right.
in her professional life, that's given her a deeper appreciation for the beauty and resilience of, the human spirit. And I think that really comes through in her poems.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It's like she's finding light in the shadows, reminding us that even in the face of death, there's still so much to celebrate
Mm.
about life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that sense of celebrating life, even in the midst of challenges,
Yeah.
that really seems to be this recurring theme. Before we wrap up here, I wanted to touch on that overarching sense of hope that runs through the whole collection.
Hmm.
Even when she's exploring those really difficult emotions, there's this underlying belief that things can get better, that light can be found, even in the darkest moments.
Yeah, it's not a naive hope.
Right.
It's something that's hard won through her own experience and struggle,
Yeah.
and it makes it feel real and makes it relatable and ultimately really inspiring.
Yeah, yeah, it's the kind of hope that comes from, facing those challenges
Yeah.
head on, acknowledging the pain,
Hmm.
but not letting it, consume you, and choosing to believe that there's still good in the world, that love, that connection, that all those things are still possible.
Even when things feel bleak.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's what makes Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light such a powerful collection, such an enduring collection. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles,
Mm.
and that even when we're facing those inevitable challenges of life, that we can choose to find the light.
It's a beautiful testament to the human spirit.
It is. It is. And with that, we come to the end of our deep dive into Ruminations of a Woman Finding Light by Poet McGill. I encourage all of you listening to seek out this collection, experience the power of her words for yourself.
Yeah, definitely do.
And as you explore these poems, we'll leave you with this thought. How do you find light in your own life? What are the sources of hope and resilience that guide you through those challenging times? Keep seeking the light, everyone.